Greetings all. So this is the video I just do for gate 42, and this will be occurring on Friday, April 10th to the 16th. And this is another Aries gate right after the 51. And like the 51, this gate also has a meaning about, or layered meanings revolving around life being out of our control and fears being present here and pregnant here. And I have a couple of notes. At the end, I may be reading a piece written by Roland Barthes. And so I'll see what my time is and then maybe add. And it's a piece called Waiting. And the reason I wanted to read it is because in the gate 42, which is the gate of endings, including death itself, is also a part of the cell or the part of this particular codon. The major theme of this codon that the 42 belongs to is the theme of life, is a ring of life and death. And also this particular gate, this particular portal is responsible for death. And death occurs on many levels. The death of cells and the rebirth of new cells. And so there is fear of death here. There's fear of endings. And at the same time, there's also an expectation of something that's going to happen because that's related to the theme of death or transformation. So there's many levels of frequency of this particular gate, this waiting, this something is going to happen. And a major expression of this theme is, in its lowest frequencies, is to try to take ownership of that coming change, that expectation. And there's many ways we as humans do that. We attempt to control our fate in many ways because it's very scary to wait and something's going to happen, but you don't know at what moment it's going to happen. So similar to the 51, which is always looking around for some kind of shock that could happen to it. The 42 is looking around for some type of ending that could happen. These Aries gates are very restless. And so there could be a bunch of behavioral affects that come into play here in order to seemingly protect the self from this inevitable change that's coming. And the lowest expression of that would be, you know, trying to be perfect, trying to improve oneself, but being perfect in a way that's not quite healthy or not quite in the healthiest expression. Improving oneself in ways which are artificial, like putting a chip in your head or putting a I don't want to go into that stuff, an operating system in your body. These are not human directions. These are transhuman directions that only improve a body without a soul and spirit, which includes also putting silicone in your body or on top of your body or Botox or any other superficial implements of feeling like you're implementing some kind of authentic change, coloring your hair. I mean, these are all things we can choose to do and have fun with, but these are ultimately attempts to allay the truth of some impending transformation. And, we all do these things. They're available to us. And we do it because the horror of of waiting for something that's going to happen that we don't know when it's going to happen. And so, there's many things, there's many ways to deal with this energy in a healthy way, or maybe not that many, but there's ways, absolute honesty with the self and where one is at in their age and their life and their relationship with death. Some people want to live till they're 100. Some people do not. Some people get to, some people do not. It is very relative to an extent, but ultimately 42 is about being stuck in the hell of waiting for something that's going to happen, but you don't know when. And it's fascinating because the author of Waiting, Roland Barthes, actually died by getting hit by a bread truck. He just walked out into the street in the wrong moment and got hit, and that's how he died. Now, ultimately, human design describes our perception of time as being framed through the neocortex. And human design claims that's where the spirit comes into the body 3 months prior to the birth. And so it describes death as something programmed in the body. We know through astrology, we know through scientism, we know through these things that cells have their life cycles. We know through astrology, Saturn has its 7-year life cycles of cellular restructuring in the body. But the question is, how do we deal with the futility of the inevitable? How do we deal with it with absolute courage in the face of death? How do we develop a relationship with death? If we can let go of expectation of good or bad, high or low, then we can get into some sort of detachment. I think it was Krishnamurti that said something to the effect of, I don't mind what happens. Think about that for a moment. I don't mind what happens. It sounds existential, it sounds nihilistic, but not if you look through its real meaning, into it through its real meaning, which is detachment. That's detachment. And too often we frame life with the Eastern version of detachment, right? Like it's some sort of Buddhist acceptance that all life is suffering and we're just gonna mope around and live in some neutral state of balance, which is impossible. Although I like to idealize that at times with my capital B for balance. What am I thinking? So, I mean, ultimately the point is well taken though by those systems in the sense that, no one truly waits. It's the mind that waits. And it's the mind that's not our own. I like what Toltec shamanism says in the sense of we have the mind of the flyers, right? They talk about the beings, the editors of this realm are the ones who dwell in this and other realms. They describe them as the flyers, and they say that we were given the flyer's mind. This is in the latter books of Castaneda. And in other words, like our mind is not our own. Our mind, the nature of our mind is deceptive to us. And human design strengthens this position by giving the central gravity of humanity to an authority in the body that's usually not mental. For generators, it's usually the sacral. For all types, it can be the emotional wave through the solar plexus. And then there's other authorities, very, very limited percentage of which is actually the mind, and that's the mental authority, the mental projector, which is actually an external authority. And it's very rare. It's the rarest form of projector. But we're in Western culture, which is full of a hot air, very mental, overemphasizing the mind. And so it is the mind that ultimately waits, sits in waiting. And so how do we overcome this? We use breathing to be in our body. And once we're in our body, we can have some sort of detachment. Doesn't mean we don't feel what we feel. Of course we do, but some form of detachment. And then with the personal vision, you could focus on what it is your goals are and what you want to accomplish. As I was discussing with a fellow astrologer today, we were talking about the slit experiment that my buddy Gary's been doing videos on, and how that experiment appears differently when no one's looking at it. And when people are looking at it, it appears a certain way. And Gary was saying that the waves that appear when it's being, I can't remember if it's being watched or not watched, but those waves that appear actually resemble the Chris code, which is in ratio frequency slightly off from the Fibonacci sequence, which is powerful and profound. I suggest you guys, I'll put in the comments to check out Gary's video, because that video kind of portends the idea that, what you focus on, you're giving you're giving a new reality to what you put your focus on, and it has a reality because it's given it. So and me and my astrologer friend were talking about this, like it actually speaks to a different, or the creation or the manifestation of a reality by putting focus on something. Very powerful. The vision narrows and that reality is being presented and created. Now, the 42 can respond with the feelings of not wanting to end things, an inability to let go of things, a grasping, trying to control life, a resistance to change. And again, this is what I was already talking about when I said that we're expecting something from life and we're trying to avoid it. So, like some of the things I mentioned before, cling to the past, trying to remain young. I wrote down something else. I'm just trying to read it. Not allowing others to go their own way. Yes. Not allowing change and not allowing change to happen, trying to control reality, preventing life from kind of rebirthing itself. It can also manifest in ways where like you're not able to complete things. This is very common with manifesting generators. So manifesting generators, don't be too hard on yourself. We're not really meant to finish everything that we begin. It's just the nature of our type. We have so much energy. We begin so many projects. We won't complete them all. We won't end them all. We won't see all of them through. Don't judge yourself. Let it go. Now, I wanted to speak to this in my other videos, but I forgot. There's an importance that comes around in life with which is in being able to symbolize things. That's why we're language users, right? That's what separates us from animals. We can reflect things back to ourselves. We can symbolize them and thus own our experience through symbolization. And I was talking about this in my Discord. I think I was supposed to get back to one of my friends on there about that T.S. Eliot quote, which is life. No, which is the symbolic is an attack on the inarticulate, something to that effect. I need to find that T.S. Eliot quote. Ultimately, the key here is to trust the ebb and flow of life. I guess a good metaphor of this is when I used to live near the ocean and I would go visit the coast and I wasn't far from it obviously, and I would go and I would just stare at the waves and I would focus and pinpoint my eyes on a wave. I'd look for a wave. And then of course that wave would come, happen, and dissolve into another wave ad infinitum. But as I gazed into each wave, it was like it was interesting game for my mind to try to because it was trying to capture the wave and hold on to it, but it couldn't because it was trying to hold on to a form that was continuously dissolving. I've had the same experience when I sit and meditate outside and stare at an object. Eventually, the object which I'm attempting to isolate in my gaze loses form, and everything in the foreground starts to merge with each other. And I begin to see this like glaze over reality. And then it can start to move, and then it'll shift colors and change. You know, this happens when people are on hallucinogenics and all that stuff. I don't need that stuff. It doesn't take me long to penetrate the veil of reality and to see through it. It's not hard to see that our reality is not as stable as we think it is. It's moving and shaking and floating all the time. And you can see it happening. And the realization of this can help the 42 understand that there ultimately is no death or separation or ending. Everything is always in movement, and you are never truly separate from anyone. How often do you meet someone who's living their reality and they're still stuck in the past images of a former relationship or a person who's passed in their life? The hell of a human being is actually to understand that reality has to do with what you're projecting. And that's a scary concept because it bodes the question, as which was part of my conversation earlier today as well, which is my friend was saying, are we ever not projecting? Are we capable of not projecting, especially in relationships? When we were thinking about that, that's wow. Like, if we're always projecting, then we never see a person as they are. Ultimately, that means we can never see a person as who they are. And that means we cannot ever be known. There's this great, amazing dialogue in this song by this band, this one man black metal band called Benighted in Sodom. And the song is called Love Dies, I think. And in the middle of this song, one of the characters, the male character, says to the female character, I want to know you. And the female character says, know me. Know me. You will never, ever know me. But before that, she says, okay, you want to, she says, know me. No, no one can know anyone else. You will never, ever know me. And that essentially is what human design describes when you study human design in the composite. How can you know another person? You can only know them through your own design. If you have a defined center, you can never know them through their undefined center because you define it. You can never know another person except through you. I feel like I'm getting off theme, but I'm using these examples, I think, and I'm hoping that I'm using these examples in order to get the point across that Gate 42 celebrates a beginning and a middle and ending that is all the same, that is all can be grasped with a sense of detachment, with an understanding that no matter who we're with or not with, or within our minds or in the physical or not. Essentially, we're never not alone. That's for the pessimist. For the optimist, we're never not all one. And I'll leave it at that. Again, 42, beginning Friday, going through the following Wednesday, 10th to the 16th. This is an Aries gate, and it's similar to the 42. It's a lot of energy. It's the energy to complete things, but it's also the fear of completing things. All these gates carry the duality of one extreme or the other, and it's up to you how to utilize the energy. Hope you guys enjoyed this and my image here of the liberated spirit. I enjoyed this because lightning is actually symbolic in this realm of things coming in and coming out. And I wanted this to be symbolic of a spirit. And it could be coming in, it could be leaving. But ultimately, it's opening its wings and it's accepting its transformation. All right, the best to you guys. Thanks for watching.